Note, if your music is experimental or described as wiggling, or sounds like this, tuning is probably not something you need to worry about. You should tune your synths, both to each other and to some standard like A440. Why? Well, two reasons. First, you want to make sure that any music you make when combining synths, either yours or with a collaborator, isn't dissonant. See the video link about dissonance. You see, if you don't tune all your oscillators in your various synths together, it'll sound like crap if your goal is Western-style music. Believe me, you don't want to be the person in the group whose tuning is off when the rest of us are tuned to each other. Secondly, if you want to do any kind of sharing, remixing, splicing, sampling, manipulation of recorded audio, or anything involving combining parts of your audio with someone else, or even with other recordings you have made previously, it will save everyone involved a lot of time and effort if your gear was tuned consistently to a standard like A440. What's A440? A440 is a standard that says A above middle C should be tuned to 440 Hz, and we use a tuner for that. So, synths fit into two groups, basically, regarding tuning. Group number one is synths with no obvious pitch knobs or generally don't need to worry about tuning. The manufacturer tries to take care of this for you, and this mostly includes digital and software-based synths. You could probably hit a key and safely assume that it will be in tune unless the patch was specifically meant to be out of tune, which is rare but does happen. It may be possible to alter the tuning of your synth, though it will almost certainly involve some kind of menu diving. Just read the manual to be sure, then leave it be and enjoy being the person who gets asked to, hey man, play an A or an E or whatever so that everybody else can tune to you. There is one nasty side note about software synthesizers. Because software engineers tend to be anarchist sociopaths, and I know I literally work with over 1,000 of them, and I include myself in their ranks, your synth may be a retro recreation all the way down to and including behaviors that are historically considered flaws, like drift, and thermal issues that can cause variance in the oscillators. If your soft synth is one of these gems, you basically need to treat it like Group 2, and honestly, I don't recommend using such things. So what's in Group 2? Well, synths with one or more pitch knobs on the front panel. This may say things like coarse, fine, or frequency, or tune, and includes things like modulars, semi-modulars, retro analog synths, or virtual analogs trying to be like real analog. So how do we tune these beasts? Well, you want to have your oscillator set so that its switches, knobs, whatever you use to tune it, are set somewhere close to the middle of their range. That means that if the pitch or frequency knobs can sweep from low to high, you should put them somewhere in the middle-ish, probably around noon. And I don't mean do it at noon, I mean noon on the dial. Why? Because most oscillators have a limited calibrated range. This means when you have a tuned synth and you play across its entire range of notes, the pitches around the note you tuned to will sound fine, but the further away you get from the note you used to tune to, the more your oscillator will slip out of tune. This is a fact of synth life. Some oscillators only have a useful calibrated range of 2 to 3 octaves. Some are good across 9 octaves, and those are probably either digital or really expensive. If you tune your synth at the extreme high or low end of its range, you'll push part of the calibrated portion out of the useful range for playing. It'll be like tuning half of your synth, and the other tuned part is in a range that's either so low or so high that we can't even hear it. So set your knobs to the middle range and decide which pitch you're going to tune to. It might be one from your bandmate synth for a reference tone or a tuning fork or a backing track that you're going to play to, or you can use a good old instrument tuner. Here I'm using a guitar tuner and a software tuner just to show you both. If you're a DAW-less jammer, I highly recommend grabbing a guitar tuner. Please note that most tuners tell you which note on the piano keyboard they think you're playing. Make sure you actually play that note. If you accidentally hit B on your synth when you meant to hit C, and the tuner thinks you're tuning to C, things are going to get weird when you try to play with other people. Be consistent and be alert. Alright, so here we go. I'm using a software tuner, so I plug it into an audio track that my synth is routed to. For demonstration, I'm also using a handheld tuner, which I've plugged into my synth output. For this demo, I'm using an oscillator from a semi-modular analog synth and a Eurorack format digital oscillator, tuning them each to each other and to the A440 standard. I turn on my analog oscillator, set it to square wave, and play a C on the keyboard in the middle range. Then I adjust my frequency knob till my tuners tell me I'm in their happy zone, turns green or whatever, indicates that I'm in tune. Depending on your synth, you might not be able to get it exactly right, but do your best. Sometimes the knobs are just too small. Now I flip over to my second oscillator and repeat the process. And we're done. Now, what if you don't have a tuner? Well, if you have a synth that you know is in tune, or at least know that you want to tune to it, you can use your ears and listen for beating. Let me show you what that means. I don't know if everyone can hear this, and from experience, I suspect that not everyone can hear this, but when you play two sounds that are close to the same note but not quite in tune, you'll hear a pulsing or beating as the two waveforms overlap and the phase cancellation starts to cause a rhythmic dropout of some of the overtones. Listen to this. Can you hear the beating? As the two synths get closer in tune, the beat slows down, and you can stop tuning when the beating is as slow as you can get it. You're probably not going to be able to stop it completely. It's a good low-tech way to know when you're close enough. One last tip. Tuning a synth when the patch has two or more oscillators that are detuned from each other can be a pain. For example, let's say you want a really thick pad, so you've got two detuned saw waveforms playing together, right? Or maybe you've got a super mega ultra saw with a gajillion separate waves combined into an orgy of rave glory. Yeah, it sounds great, but in practice, you're trying to tune something that is intentionally detuned when you use that. So when tuning, consider changing patches to something like a simple unmodulated saw, or a square, or a sine wave. That's it. Go forth and tune thy instruments. I'm Luke Stark, and this is Synth Seeker. Talk to you later.